and welcome to the 76th episode of Recluse Horror. This is a daily horror movie review podcast. With me again today is Sam.
Hey.
So just a little background on the project. Back on my birthday in April, I decided I wanted to watch and review a horror movie every single day. I have done so for the past 343 days. Although only the last 76 have been podcasts, before that it was text reviews. So today was my second day off. I have Friday, Saturdays off at my job right now. And I had been wanting to go see a movie. Sam, you had been wanting to see this movie too, right?
Yeah.
So since I make more money and I don't feel inclined only to go to $5 movies and I actually can't go to the Tuesday ones anymore. Just my hours line up exactly with when they run movies on Tuesdays. So we decided to go see Annihilation, 2018, obviously, in the theaters today. Sam, how did you like Annihilation?
I liked it. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I had a different expectation based on both the previews and the things that I've heard of it. I don't need to get into that impression yet. So Sam, how would you describe this movie? How would you synopsize this movie without?
I don't know, but my expectations of it were more like were more outlandish because
that's what
of
mine were. That's what I was stopping myself from saying.
Yeah, because of the I guess
the preview, the production history stuff.
Yeah, this movie only is going to be shown in the U.S.
Yeah, in theaters at least.
And somewhere else or no?
Yeah,
nowhere
I think
else?
it's
like one other place.
The U.S. and I can't remember what the other place is.
And yeah, and then it's supposed to immediately go to Netflix.
Yeah.
Without anybody else seeing it in the theaters.
Yeah. Which is unusual.
Which made me think the movie would be really weird or something.
Me too. Yeah.
Which
made me really excited about it.
But I feel like the trailers were more right to what it was. A little bit more.
You think so?
A little bit.
Yeah.
The trailers are very vague.
The trailers are very vague. They're vague about what exactly is happening or even the premise of the story. But they also make it seem more weird than it is and more action-y. And I feel like it doesn't really meet any of those very much. It's not super weird. The visuals are pretty good. But anyway, the story basically, since Sam didn't synopsize it, he just said the thing that I stopped myself from saying it before we synopsized the movie. Basically, it's about this woman who ends up... I don't even know how you would... Because I don't know which part to keep as as the spoiler part. I guess she finds herself involved in this project trying to go into this weird place that is weird. And I guess the circumstances of how she gets there and why she gets there are sort of...
Yeah, I guess on the very, just general synopsis, there's an anomaly.
Yeah.
And people go and...
they're trying to, investigate
Yeah,
it.
investigate. That's a very general...
Yeah, a very general... I really don't know what part of it not to spoil is the thing. So I guess that's a pretty good one. Yeah,
there's not a ton you can even really spoil in a way.
There really isn't. I feel like if you go and tell the whole backstory of how she ends up there, then you've told the movie.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
It's just not spoilery.
No. But that's
what
not
the
spoilers.
movie is.
Yeah. So the movie stars Natalie Portman, whom pretty much everybody should be familiar with. I'm gonna go ahead and say most people have seen the her as Queen Amidala and
yeah, is that right?
Yeah, in Star Wars, I'm gonna go ahead and say people know her as Evie from V for Vendetta. Those are probably not her most popular movies. She was in Garden State.
All right.
Right?
Yeah. What other movies were?
I don't know. I know there's a bunch of blockbusters that she was in.
What other movies is Natalie Portman in?
She was in the Thor movie, the first one, right?
All right.
in the second one.
That chicks. What else?
I don't know what she's famous for. I see her for all of her weird movies.
What else is she in?
I don't know.
Come on.
Sam, what movies do you know her from?
I know her from all those ones, too.
But, like, which ones do you think of when you think of, like, Natalie Portman?
The Professional?
Oh, The Professional. She's so good in that. Yeah. One of her first roles.
And Mars Attacks.
Oh, Mars Attacks! Oh my goodness. Yeah, she's in such great stuff, I forgot. She must really like genre fiction, I guess. She's been in a lot of that stuff, which is funny because she's been in a lot of commercial stuff too. Yeah, but she always ends up back in those roles. The other name that I know is Oscar Isaac.
Right.
Oscar Isaac, he is, what's his character's name?
He's Apocalypse in X-Men.
Yeah. Apparently he's Apocalypse in X-Men.
I don't know what his name is.
No, not in this. I don't care what his name is in this. It's Kane. His name is Kane.
Oh, okay.
He plays the pilot in the new trilogy, the new Star Wars trilogy.
Oh, right.
What's his name?
Poe,
that's right. Yeah, okay, he plays Poe in that. For podcast fans too, I don't think a lot of people necessarily know this, but he plays a fairly important role in this podcast called Homecoming, which is being adapted for, I think, a TV series. It might be a movie. I think it's a TV series that has a ton of Hollywood stars in it. It has Amy Sedaris, David Cross, David Schwimmer, Catherine Keener. It's a really good podcast. Most people who know about podcasts know about that. It's on Gimlet, so it's a really, it's a commercialized one. But if you're not, like, generally a podcast, like a fiction podcast person, this is a really good one. Oscar Isaac, again, plays a very important role in it. So it's a pretty palatable one because it has Hollywood talent in it, for people who don't generally find themselves listening to fiction podcasts. So I would take this second to say, check him out. He does a great job in that, as does everybody in that show, actually. But yeah, okay, so Annihilation, the movie that we're talking about, not the actors.
Can we talk about the actors for 1 second longer?
Sure, okay.
Oscar Isaac was in a movie called Lenny the Wonder Dog.
Okay.
Credited the role was Fart Man.
Oh dear.
And his credit in that was Oscar Isaac Hernandez.
Right.
So this is before he dropped the Hernandez.
I was actually going to talk about that.
That's all. What?
I just that, like, I feel like, and this is not, I do not personally know if this is something that he's doing necessarily, but Oscar Isaac to me feels like a little bit like he's trying to hide his Hispanicness.
Right.
Behind, I mean, he's very suave and
Hispanic? Is that what you're going to say? Suave
no.
Hispanic?
No, he's very...
no, definitely not.
No. I feel like he can play the line on his ethnicity and kind of play the, like, don't worry about it role. It's the only way I feel like Hispanic men really can get into it usually, unless you're somebody like Michael Pena, who, I don't know, recently he hasn't been doing, like, a ton of stuff. Or if you're a Hispanic woman. It's okay to be a Hispanic woman in things. But I feel like Oscar Isaac, both by dropping the Hernandez, and just the certain roles that he's chosen, like, I feel like he's
marketable.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Like,
yeah, that's exactly
what.
Like that's 100% what happened. He dropped the Hernandez.
Yeah.
And now he's marketable.
That's I
don't understand what you're questioning.
My criticism
I don't understand the question.
My criticism is not of Oscar Isaac. It's of a world where you have to drop your. I mean, his name is Oscar.
He was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna drop that Hernandez and then get that Fadia. Dang fool." That's a good idea.
We haven't specifically mentioned it before.
And then he got roles, and then he made money and shit. Like, it's fucking genius.
We haven't mentioned this specifically on this podcast. I would just like to note at this point that Sam is Hispanic. So if that offended you in any way, please know that at least it's one of, somebody who is actually a person of color of the same variety that we're talking about at this point. If
DreamWorks or whatever doesn't have to apologize for Coco, I shouldn't have to apologize for that, huh?
Oh dear. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what happened.
This is not my issue on this is not a concern with what Oscar Isaac is doing. Oscar Isaac should do whatever he feels is right for him. But the fact that, like, you
have to do that?
Yeah, that you have to do that in Hollywood still in 2018. You still have to do that. Is really depressing to me. And, like, every year that it keeps... And we've been talking about this for years. Well, yeah, I know. We've been talking about this for years, me and you specifically. You know, in all the different shows that are becoming more diverse and stuff, you still do not see Hispanic men that play, like, leading roles in these things very often, unless it's somebody like Oscar Isaac, who's dropped, kind of going with the don't worry about it ethnicity, like, and then, Benjamin Bratt, that's not his real name, right?
No, that is not Benjamin. Yeah. Benjamin Bratt is not his real name.
And then Lou Diamond Phillips, is that
Charlie
his real name?
Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. Yeah. All of the Estevezes who are Sheens now.
Yeah.
All of that. Like, if you can play the line on the, like, don't worry about it side of your ethnicity, that's pretty much the only way that Hispanic men are able to get roles, and I fucking hate that. They, even in movies like, okay, the only one that I can think of where they had, like, a super Mexican character, and I didn't see this movie, was Suicide Squad.
Oh, really? El Diablo.
Sam loved El Diablo. Slipping into darkness.
That's the only thing in that movie I liked. It's super sad because that movie's terrible.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. That has nothing to do with really that much, except for that Oscar Isaac, like, every time I see him, I'm always like, it would be great if he could, like, play a person that, you know, he's more representative
was
of
Mexican.
One time. Yeah, instead of like, I'm from space, or don't worry about it, my name's Kane, or like...
Yeah, my name's Kane. Yeah. Oh man, remember that Mexican, or I don't even know what ethnicity he is. He's Hispanic of some kind.
Oscar Isaac?
Yeah, is he Mexican? I think I've looked it up before.
I think I have. I think
remember.
He's Mexican and something else. But yeah, Hispanic. Yeah, no, Kane.
Yeah, his name's Kane.
Yeah, exactly.
A very Hispanic name of Kane.
Yeah. And again, that is not a specific criticism of this movie either. I think that race doesn't really play a part in this movie, and the cast is very diverse. This is just something that I think of every time I think of, like, actors like Oscar Isaac, and I haven't really addressed it on the podcast. He's from Guatemala.
He was born in Guatemala.
Okay. Guatemala. But yeah, it's just something that I think about pretty much every time I watch a movie
a lot too.
Yeah, and he is. Yeah, he plays a big role in the movie. But the cast is very diverse. They do not go out of their way to make anything about the race of the characters, which is like, really, it's secondary to everything. Everything pretty much about the characters themselves is secondary to the story, which is interesting. And I don't fault anybody in this production for any lack of racial sensitivity or anything like that. I think it doesn't come into play in this movie at all. And there are a lot of movies set in the real world that,
it's just something you think about when you watch the movie.
Yeah.
Especially because this actress' name is Gina Rodriguez.
Yeah, Gina Rodriguez.
And it was exactly like what you were saying, that you could be, like, female.
Yeah,
and Hispanic, but...
Yeah, and still get roles. Like, she's not a big name who just happened to be in a good role that like, launched her career. She's... I won't say nobody, I'm sure she's been in stuff, but she's not somebody I've heard of before.
She's not Oscar Isaac. She's not fucking Apocalypse.
She's not Apocalypse.
Come on.
Oh, boy. But anyway, let's eventually actually talk about this movie. I just stuff like that. I know,
sidetracked it.
I know, I did.
And then I had so many funny jokes about the subject.
So, what did you think about the effects?
I liked them mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are really good and really, like, the highlight of the movie.
Both design and execution.
Yeah. Some of them fell a little short.
Mm-hmm.
I won't be specific on them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just won't be specific.
Good,
yeah, but it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
We specifically wanted to see it
in the theater.
I heard that it would make a difference in this movie, and I feel like it really does.
Yeah.
So I feel like other people are going to have a harder time enjoying it in that same way.
Yeah, I think anybody who's watching this off Netflix in another country right now is probably like, okay, I get why this movie didn't get released in the theaters. But I think if you saw it in the theaters, then you would get why it was released in the theaters. So.
I could still, personally, I could still see really enjoying it on that same level, but I would really have to be in that mood that the theater sets.
Yeah.
And even more so at home because... there's distractions. There's more light. There's more sounds.
There's cats running around.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and you can't really focus as much.
And this movie is the mood is so important.
Yeah,
and if you're being distracted, then the mood is not going to land with you. So if you want to watch this one, I would say you can watch it with a person if they're dedicated to being as focused on the movie as you are. But like dark room, no distraction.
Maybe drink some cough syrup.
That was another thing I was going to say, is there are a lot of parts of this movie that I feel like people who are on drugs would really enjoy, and then a few that I feel like would not
really
be
hate.
great. Yeah.
They really hate.
Yeah. I'd like to say this is one of those...
That was really good about it. That's the stuff I liked about the movie.
Yeah. The thing that I would say about the effects, I agree that most of them are very good in both design and execution. I think all of them are good in design. Mm-hmm. But... I felt like, just based on the trailer of this movie, I expected more of them. I expected more weirdness. I expected more visuals, that like, every shot, once you got to the anomaly, would have. Like, there's just nothing normal about this place. For whatever reason, just the way that it was. And I also felt like the build on it, on those visuals was a little bit slower than it should have been, personally. I think once they got in, yes, I think it should sort of like ramp up. I think that's the right thing for the mood of this movie and the theme of this movie. But I felt like it should have ramped up a little bit quicker. And even by the end, I felt like a lot of the weird stuff wasn't very concentrated.
Because of the like controversy, technically, around the movie. Sort of
controversy, yeah. The gossip or whatever.
Well, they're definitely not getting a wide release.
Yeah.
And it going to Netflix basically after it's out of the theaters.
Yeah.
And in other countries immediately
it's already
going to Netflix.
I know in Australia they can already watch it there.
I expected the movie to have more of a mother situation.
Yeah, me too.
And this isn't that movie at all.
No, not at all.
So if maybe you heard that and thought that, it's not really that, and that I think a little bit kind of changed my opinion on it watching it. Mm-hmm. Like had something to do with how I felt about it at the end. Mm-hmm. Maybe like because I was just kind of hoping for a little bit more.
Right.
Like to me, this really isn't very weird. It's kind of straightforward.
It's very palatable for a movie that was marketed to seem so strange.
Yeah, and then to have like controversy around it.
Yeah,
it is strange, and it's
pull the world's theatrical release basically.
Yeah, basically, and it's not that. It's not a mother weird movie.
So, for those of you who haven't, have we talked about Mother on the podcast?
No, we have not talked about Mother.
We should talk about Mother on the podcast at some point.
Or we did do a Mother podcast, right? This is before the podcast?
It was definitely before the podcast when we watched it.
Did you write a review?
And I did write a review, but I can't remember whether we jumped the gun and were like, I love this movie, let's talk about this movie, because we did that with a few of them. Mm-hmm. But regardless, Mother, for those of you who don't know, is a movie by Darren Aronofsky and it stars Jennifer Lawrence. If you're not a director person, it's the one with Jennifer Lawrence that's really fucking weird. The premise and the way that they market it is basically there's some uninvited house guests that show up at this woman and her husband's house, and it just gets more and more hard to be sort of like polite about it. But it's a horror movie, and they were very clear in the marketing, I felt like, that it was going to be a horror movie. The thing is, I think that many of the trailers and stuff like that, I don't know if I've seen all of them, they don't show and portray how weird it is and how weird it gets. And it's a really fantastic film, especially if you're a cinephile. It's one of those ones that if you're somebody who, like, if there's a movie that comes down to, like, audiences hated it and critics loved it, and you're almost always on the critic side about, like, no, this is a really great film, it's just not a palatable film for general audiences, like, that is your movie. That's what I thought this was going to be. That's what Sam thought this was going to be. Is one of those things where it's too weird, it's marketed improperly, it maybe shouldn't have had a full theatrical release, globally. Because it is it's as much of an art film as you're ever going to get with this sort of budget and with these sort of names. Mm-hmm. That's what Mother was. And that's what this felt like.
It was going to be.
Yeah.
Through semi-marketing-ish.
Yeah, through the circumstances around it.
And it's just not.
It's not that movie. It's much more palatable. If you're wondering about this movie being too weird for you to watch, don't think it's too weird. I would say that it is a little bit lighter on the horror side of things than I would usually review a movie, but I did want to talk about this one because of all the weird stuff around it. And it is a sci-fi horror movie. Like, don't get me wrong, it is definitely sci-fi horror. But I just felt like maybe there should have been a bit more horror to it.
I've seen horror movies that are very horror. They had less horror
than this. Yeah, I mean, probably. The one that I reviewed yesterday, you weren't here for, but it was barely. There was no horror in it, but it was a short film. This is more so this. I think the horror moments are definitely horror.
Yeah,
they are very strong horror in a couple of places. But as far as, like, general overtones and, like, acting style and stuff like that, like, it doesn't really have a ton of that. How did you feel about the acting?
It was good. I liked the acting a lot, actually.
I don't think there was really one person who didn't perform. Oh, and we forgot to mention Jennifer Jason Leigh is in this as well.
Right.
Jennifer Jason Leigh is in this as well. I cannot think of a single thing that she has done right now.
Ton of stuff.
But she's done a million things. She's the one that I personally know her from the best is Existenz. It's a movie I was obsessed with when I was younger, and, like, I saw it on, like, HBO or something like that and became obsessed with it and could not remember what the name of it was.
Because it's named Existenz.
Because it's gibberish. That's EXISTENZ, I think.
Something like that.
And the capitalization is all fucked up. But, like, that's a sci-fi horror thing. I think a lot of people know her from it. It has kind of a cult following. She's also from The Machinist, The Jacket, and what was the other one that and Twin Peaks.
She's a single white female too.
Single white female? Okay.
She's in a lot of stuff, but that's just some of the stuff you might know.
You'd probably recognize her if you saw her, even if you couldn't necessarily place her. She's been in a lot of stuff. Many of them sci-fi and horror stuff, so. But yeah, I thought everybody in this did a good job. I don't think there was one moment where I saw anybody acting really, other than maybe a couple of choices made by the people telling Oscar Isaac what to do. And that it didn't really feel that wrong. It just felt like personally I would have wanted them to go a different way with it. Mm-hmm. What did you think about the cinematography?
It was really good.
Yeah. All of it. The use of color, the cinematography, the shots. There are some really interesting shots, that I liked.
The sound design was amazing.
Oh, the sound design is really good, too.
Super good. That's another thing that would be hard to not have in the movie. Yeah,
turn it up, crank it. If you have surround sound or you're planning on getting it, like, soon, wait until you have it. Because this really... Like, the sound design is incredible. Mm-hmm. It really is good.
Oh, yeah, all the technical aspects
Cinedoke, New York. She was in Cinedoke, New York as well. I forgot. Sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
All the technical aspects are really good. Mm-hmm. There's pretty much nothing that you could really say other than that. Yeah, it was really good. So it's... Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like...
Yeah. There's all of the technical aspects, all of the acting. I think the problem, other than, like, the trailers and the information surrounding the movie giving you a different impression of what it was going to be, I think the only problem is that there are some definite script problems.
Ooh, finally we get to talk about it.
Yeah, I think this is really the last thing that we have to talk about because everything else is good. So... We usually, whenever we're trying to review something, we try not to talk about it too heavily afterwards so that we can save it for the podcast. Like, that sounds like a silly thing, but when we've talked about it, sometimes getting that stuff across is not as easy. Sam could not help himself for talking for like 25 minutes about the different script problems, and I totally understand why. So now, mind you, these problems, they're all pretty small in the scheme of things, but there are a lot of them. Would you say that was correct, or would you say they're big?
Yes.
You would say they were big?
I'm not sure, but both.
Both. Okay.
Okay, so the story is based on a novel that was published in 2014.
Okay.
By the same name, Annihilation.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, maybe some of this is from that, and or was glossed over in that, or was envisioned in a different way. But the lapse of logic with the expedition was driving me insane.
Yeah.
The cliche nature of some of the decisions, and to put into the movie to push the story forward were also driving me insane. And those are like the two things that really keep me from what's keeping me from enjoying the movie, because I was questioning those things instead of watching the movie.
Yeah. Right.
Until the end, when it feels like you leave all that stuff behind.
I would say so, yeah.
But but because
the ending is very engaging. Yeah.
But because of the, like, and it's not even really that slow pace of a movie. But it's moody, like though. It's like a questioning movie. So you question the movie itself when you're questioning what's happening in the movie. Right.
They're trying to figure out something, so you're trying to figure out
why they don't do it better.
Why they don't do it better. A little bit, yeah. A little bit. I would say that's not inaccurate. So a lot of the like protocol technical things, the ideas behind this, and again, all of this stuff gets into spoilers, so you can't really talk about them, but there's like 50 things that they could have done differently, that they would have done differently, as far as like setting up this expedition into this area, this anomaly, that they just, for whatever reason, chose not to do. Like, they chose not to.
There's almost no scientific process.
No.
They're just like, slapdash, let's do this.
Right.
And there's plenty of
strategic, like military.
Yeah. And there's plenty of reasons why they should, and time to plan this stuff. If it was like a last-ditch effort, like, we have to do this way. Right. That would be one thing, but that's not the way. But they didn't
justify it that way in the story. Yeah, there's a lot that wasn't justified the way that it was done in the story. And this is being handled by a group of people who would be able to have access to the things that would have made more sense, or at least things, maybe they wouldn't, the people, I'm not even going to talk about that. But they would have had access to the sorts of things that they would have needed, to possibly improve the chances of what's going on and what the primary directive and mission is here. They would have had access to those resources, and for whatever reason, they choose not to use any of those resources. And they don't really spend a whole lot of time focused on why this is how they're going to do it.
Yeah, they don't justify it at all. Yeah. It's very weird in that way. Feels like it's just forgotten about when they wrote it.
And I wonder if, part of it could have been more deleted scenes. There are definitely a few things in this that are clearly deleted scenes. That get no explanation, but that are important, which is kind of weird. But I think the other thing is that it's possible that some of the justification for that may have happened off screen, and they're like, it cuts away too much. It makes people question it. It forces people to question it instead of, like, allowing them the time because of the moody pace of the movie. Like, allowing them time to think about all these things and pick it apart. Just the circumstances make it sort of unbelievable. And in the beginning of the movie, I just kind of went with it personally because it felt like they were, and I know that we had talked about this before, but it kind of felt like one of those movies where it's just going to break down completely and logic and reason aren't going to make any sense anymore because it's going to be one of those super weird movies. And in that particular case, I would have just accepted those things because it's just the premise for this movie that doesn't really make a lot of sense and is more about visuals or symbolism or whatever it is.
But it's really not.
But it's not that movie. It's a very standard story that has some weird stuff in it, genuinely weird stuff, some pretty good horror, even if it's like a little bit light on the horror in some places, and some really good sci-fi. I honestly don't understand why they nerfed this to the level that they did, as far as like release and stuff like that. I know maybe it shouldn't have gotten like a full wide theatrical release. I don't think it would have been terribly successful that way. But to only say US and whoever it is.
I don't know. I feel like it could be as successful as anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think they just didn't have any faith in it. And I feel like it could have, because of the, like, I don't know. I haven't read the book. I don't know. Yeah. But this feels like somebody half wrote something a certain way, but then, like, slid other stuff in to make it more palatable.
Yeah. It does feel a lot like that.
And I feel like it's as palatable as anything else. But with a little bit extra that other people, that might give people something to latch onto that aren't as committed to watch something fucking weird as shit. Yeah. Just because they enjoy it. Like, I will watch something weird as shit, weird. And I might not like it, or I might really, really like it.
But you definitely aren't, like, you seek that stuff out.
Yes.
And I would say to a degree I do as well. I think you seek out weirder stuff, or of different types of weird. But I do as well. Anything like that where it's like, if somebody's like, if you ask somebody how a movie was and they're like, it was super fucking weird, then I'm writing down that name immediately. Like, it is something that I do like. I kind of feel like, I don't know whether this is studio interference. I don't know if this is, I mean, it could be a number of things. Again, it could be some disputes about which direction things were going. It could be the director. Who is the director of this anyway? I didn't,
It's,
Alex Garland. Oh, that name sounds familiar.
He directed Ex Machina.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
He wrote the novelization of The Beach.
Weird. Oh, and he wrote 28 Days Later. Yeah, and Sunshine.
He wrote Sunshine.
Okay, so those both have pretty weird aspects. So I feel like it probably doesn't have necessarily anything to do with him then, in that particular case. It doesn't have anything to do with him being, like, just a traditional director that they threw into this weird movie. So that's not the source of this problem. Ex Machina, 28 Days Later, and Sunshine they're all great, by the way, but they all have some very weird aspects, and they embrace them. I feel like in this, it felt like they were hesitant about it a lot more. Again, trying to play like some weird middle line, which is a bad way to go. And who wrote the script for this? I usually don't talk about script writers because it's just...
He wrote it.
Oh, he also wrote it. Okay, he did the screen adaptation as well. Well, then to me, I know that it's weird to be talking about this as we're discovering this stuff, or remembering it at least. I knew Alex Garland directed it. I didn't know that he wrote it. This feels like studio interference. It also feels like the same reason why they would have nerfed it. I'm going to come down on that being my opinion. I have no idea. It's just...
I have absolutely no idea. I am purely speculating.
Idea. Pure speculation. But with the sort of projects that Alex Garland has been involved with before, I don't think he has any qualms about going weird, or anything like that. And definitely no logic. Not nearly the degree of logic problems if you see something like Ex Machina, which Sam hasn't seen.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. But, like, there are definitely logical problems, but they aren't this type of thing where it's, like, 70 little things where it's like, that doesn't make sense. Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do this? There's 100 things they could have done that would have been made so much more sense than this. And, yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting. Yeah, to me, this feels like studio interference. And then when, I mean, and again, this is total speculation, but it sounds like somebody, the creative team or whoever has any kind of clout who was involved with the actual production of the movie, like stood up for it and refused to make certain cuts or whatever, then they're like, okay, then we'll cut the movie. It's kind of the same thing that happened with The Fountain with Darren Aronofsky. Not to get back to Darren Aronofsky, who did Mother, but I'm gonna do it. Originally, the cast of that movie, the eventual cast was Rachel Weisz and Hugh Jackman. Not my favorite. I really am not a fan too much of either of them. But originally it was supposed to be cast with Brad Pitt and Rachel Weisz, which I don't know. Does she pronounce that Weiss or Weiss?
I think Weiss, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Just, yeah. But anyway, it was originally supposed to be Brad Pitt and Rachel Weisz, but Brad Pitt at the time had this contract with Cate Blanchett, I think, where they had to do their pictures together. They had like a certain movie deal where if you got the one, you got the other. They were a package deal. Originally, they offered Darren Aronofsky like hundreds of millions of dollars, some crazy budget to do The Fountain. And because he was like, no, that's not the person I envisioned for this role, she won't work for it. I can't take her. She cannot play the lead in this. They slashed his budget to ribbons. And he had to recast Brad Pitt with Hugh Jackman, which again is a lesser choice to me personally. I don't like the roles that he does. I don't think there's any problem with him as an actor, but his face makes me angry because I hate Wolverine, basically, is my problem with him, to be completely honest. But anyway, even back then I wasn't a huge fan. But yeah, the studio said, well, fine, if you're going to do that, then you can make this movie on a shoestring budget. And it wasn't a shoestring, but, a much considerably smaller budget than they were anticipating, and how they had built this story was around that. So it feels like kind of one of those situations to me. And I have no reason for believing that other than just like based on the sort of things that Alex Garland has done and the way that this movie has been treated, where they pulled the theatrical releases, where it almost seems spiteful on a certain degree. And not just a savvy business move. Like I said, I don't think it would necessarily do super great in the theater, but I think it would have done probably well enough to justify it in certain markets, beyond just America and like one other place that we think they might have released it. So, anyway, that was a super long tangent. I love Darren Aronofsky, even though he's made some questionable decisions in the last few years. Mother is not among them. That was super great. Anything else?
I like Hugh Jackman. I'm not always the biggest fan of Wolverine.
Mm.
I like the original concept of the character, which was like a weird murderer hero, which he is not anymore.
Weird murderer hero. That's not inaccurate.
That's what he used to be. He's not that now. He is just a hero.
Yeah. He'd fight ninjas naked in the Canadian forests.
Mm-hmm. He would murder
them.
Policemen.
Oh, yes, that too.
Cause he wanted to.
So, like the Punisher, only naked and crazy instead of clothed and crazy.
But yeah, that seems like kind of maybe a similar situation that happened with this movie. Mm-hmm. There's not too much more I could say that you haven't. I just, I've seen The Fountain, and it was kind of weird in that way. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really good.
I still thought it was good too. Yeah. Actually, yeah. And
again, I don't like either of the two lead actors, very much.
I know. I don't know why.
Yeah.
He went to bat for
Rachel Weisz.
Rachel Weisz so hard.
I think Cate Blanchett maybe would have been a better choice, honestly. But
I
applaud his artistic integrity.
His stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah, his stick-to-itiveness, his artistic integrity there.
I don't even believe in that.
As an artist, Sam doesn't believe in artistic integrity.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, he's just looking for the next person to give him some money to draw stuff.
Give me something.
So yeah, it does feel like that. By the way, if anybody is wondering how I would just be able to pull that out of my head somewhere, for a long time, Darren Aronofsky was my very favorite director. I have liked most of his movies until pretty recently, almost all of them until pretty recently. So, a couple I've just had no interest in, and a couple of them definitely have other problems. But yeah, I don't know. So that's just another thing that is non-horror related. He doesn't do a ton of horror stuff, although much of it can kind of play that line sometimes. Anything else that you really want to talk about?
We've always talked about it a ton. This is already super long.
It's a super long episode. I know it's going to take me forever to edit this.
It feels a little bit like an X-Files episode.
Okay.
If that makes you kind of get the feel of it a little bit.
But like moodier.
Moodier, stretched out. It's what I think some of the X-Files episodes want to be.
Yes.
But they don't have the budget to be.
The budget or the time.
And I really enjoyed it on that level. I don't know if I said, I actually really did like the movie.
Yeah.
Just those few things.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, like, because I think the mood makes even those problems, the major problems with, like, how the whole thing, the premise of basically the whole thing is ridiculous on a certain, or not the premise of the movie, but the premise of, like, how and why they're doing things the way that they are, is ridiculous. There are just, like I said, 90 different ways that you could do that would be a better choice based on the knowledge that they have. Mm-hmm. But the mood of this being so strange and, like, not really strange, but it's very moody. It's very,
heavy feeling. It's very awkward in a sense. It's very, like, creeping. Yes. A bit creeping without being terribly creepy. It's creeping. It's not creepy.
It's not creepy. No, it's not. But yeah, there's not a lot of thrills or anything like that. There's not a lot of, like, really high action scenes or anything like that. It has this very, the mood gives it a very good pace, I feel like. A very slow pace of, where the main focus is, like, sort of discovery in a lot of ways. In every way that you can possibly mean that. And so it sort of makes those problems that might kill me in another movie a little less important once you get into, like, the real story. It does mean that like, the whole premise of the movie is kind of shot. But you also don't really care because it's not as much about that. So, at least in my opinion. Would you agree that sounds somewhat
right?
Yeah. Okay. The mood of the movie is very superior. It is not quite a mood I've seen in another movie. I've seen things sort of similar, but not quite this particular mood. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to talk about with this?
Yeah.
I really do think that if you had any interest in seeing this, even though there are some definite, like, shortcomings in this, like, it's not as actiony as it showed, it's not as weird as it showed.
I would super recommend if you have the chance to see it in the theater.
Definitely see it in the theater.
To do so.
Yeah. Before it leaves.
If you don't have the chance, it probably won't ruin your life or anything. But
no.
It does feel like one of those movies where if you don't see it in the theater, it is kind of ruining the watch. And that's the only reason I went to see it is because I heard someone say that same thing. Yeah. And I was like, oh, maybe I should check that out.
I feel like the theater. Yeah, exactly. I feel like if I had seen this even on a pretty decent TV, but in my home where there's distractions and whatever, I feel like I really would have not understood what the deal was with everybody. Because I know a lot of people who have seen this and did enjoy it quite a bit. I think more than me specifically, even though I enjoyed it quite a bit. People almost obsessed with it. And I feel like if I had seen it in my house, even having seen it now and understanding the appeal on the theatrical level, I would have not understood, like, what all the hype was about. I feel like it is a little bit overhyped among if you have friends who are into stuff like this, it has probably been a little bit overhyped for you, and it's totally different than what I think anybody's expectations of it were. But I do think it's definitely worth seeing it. If you can see it in the theater, and this is the sort of movie that we're talking about is something that you're interested in, go see it. Definitely go see it. Go see it in the theater. Is there anything else? Is that pretty much it? Okay. Yeah, so I guess that's our review of Annihilation from 2018, and that's our episode. Thank you so much for listening. I know this is probably a pretty long episode. Believe me, it'll feel longer when I'm editing it. So if you did enjoy this, please rate, review, subscribe, whatever it is on whatever site that you found us. If you would like to share it, that's the best way you can help the show. You can do so. The platforms we are available on are YouTube, Player FM, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, and pretty much any podcatcher out there. If you would like to reach out to us on social media, you can do so on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can email me at reclusehorror@gmail.com. Sam, do you have like a... Do you have a rating for this one?
Yeah, they're spoiler ones, so you might have to bleep them.
Okay.
You know how to bleep things, right? Have you bleeped me before?
I have. Usually I just
I don't listen to
the...
the podcast. I don't know why anybody would.
I bleeped you one time, and it was the last time you asked about that.
Cool.
Is when I bleeped you.
Cool. Bleep me again, then.
Okay.
Okay. If you feel like it needs to be.
Okay.
Okay. I give it I give it 2.
Okay.
And I give it either one Darrell and one Pepsi Man.
I don't know what those are.
Oh, no one gets references anymore.
What is that from?
Just Google it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I give this movie like 46 colors.
40 colors.
There's lots of colors. I am gonna... I think the last time I had to bleep it was you rated it the exact same thing. Yeah.
And a Darrell and a Pepsi Man?
No, but the first one. Yeah. Like, literally, it was. Because it was the ritual. Okay, Sam remembers.
For the ritual.
No, we're bleeping this whole thing so they don't even know. This is the same rating that he gave for the ritual that's also going to be bleeped. So, anyway, thank you so much for listening. Sam, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.